Hello, I'm Carmen Johnson, and this is Living Education, a magazine show that discusses educational issues important in our everyday lives. On today's show, we'll be dealing with the issues of bullying and the impact it has on our physical, emotional, and academic lives of our children. Let me take a moment and introduce you to our panel of experts. Ms. Rochelle Wilson, Director of School Culture and Student Behavior for District of Columbia Public Schools. Ms. Colleen Eisenbeiser, Director of the Teach Institute of Anne Arundel Community College. Dr. Merlin Irving, leading researcher in the area of bullying and Associate Dean for Research and Sponsored Programs at Howard University. Before we begin our discussion, our Chief Educational Correspondent, Miyoshi Crawford, will outline some alarming facts regarding bullying and its impact on children and families.
To a study by the National Crime Victimization Survey, violent crime in schools has declined dramatically since 1994. In 2007, the annual rate of serious violent crime was 40 per 1,000 students, which was less than half of the rate in 1994. While underreported, student bullying is one of the most frequently reported discipline problems. 21% of elementary schools, 43% of middle schools, and 22% of high schools reported problems with bullying in the 2005-2006 academic year. School bullying and cyberbullying statistics are increasingly viewed as important contributors to youth violence, including homicide and suicide. 30% of U.S. students in grades 6 through 10 are involved in moderate or frequent bullying as bullies, victims, or both. According to the American Justice Department in 2009, 1 out of every 4 kids will be abused by another youth. School bullying and cyberbullying statistics show 77% of students are bullied mentally, verbally, and physically. 23% of elementary school students reported being bullied 1 to 3 times on average per month at school. 77% of students said they have been bullied. Cyberbullying statistics reveal similar numbers. 14% of those who have been bullied said they experienced severe reactions to the abuse. 282,000 students are physically attacked in secondary schools each month. It is estimated that 160,000 students miss school for fear of being bullied each day. According to school bullying statistics, 46% of males and 26% of females reported they have been in physical fights. Teenagers say that revenge is the strongest motivation for school shootings. 87% said shootings are motivated by a desire to get back at those who have hurt them. 86% said other kids picking on them, making fun of them, or bullying them causes teenagers to turn to lethal violence in schools.
We begin our discussion with questions for the entire panel. What is bullying?
Well, bullying is repeated and intentional and power-based behavior that is inflicted upon a person, and it's usually inflicted upon individuals that feel defenseless. These are individuals that feel like they can't protect themselves.
Now, Colleen, outline for us the 3 types of bullying: direct, indirect, and cyberbullying.
Direct bullying is really an episode of face-to-face bullying. When a student or a young person is bullied with somebody right there, it could be verbal abuse, it could be physical abuse. Indirect bullying has to do with hurting someone's reputation. In many cases, this may be done through notes, through messages, through bad gossip that is circulated about a person. Cyberbullying, of course, involves technology. In many cases, it involves social media, other types of cyber bullying that could be difficult to detect who the bully is in many cases, and that's what's so invasive about cyberbullying.
Okay, recently in the news we've seen many tragic cases of bullying. Chief Educational Correspondent Miyoshi Crawford provided more information in the clip we just watched. So Rochelle, as a public school administrator, how widespread is bullying in elementary, middle, and high schools? And does that type of bullying change as the grade levels change?
Carmen, that's a great question. I think you'll find that you'll see bullying across the spectrum. It's a pre-K 12th grade post-secondary education issue. We typically see bullying on the rise in elementary, and then it kind of peaks middle school, and then you see some up and down movement on the secondary level. However, we're seeing that there's an increase of cyberbullying at the secondary level.
Okay. Dr. Irving, during your years of research, have you discovered a difference between teasing and bullying? And is teasing considered a gateway of bullying?
Teasing and bullying in schools are sometimes used synonymously, but teasing is actually different from bullying in that it can be productive and functional. Teasing can be when someone is joking to create a relationship, and bullying is different because of the intent. The intent of bullying is to be harmful or to cause discomfort with someone.
Dr. Irving, briefly, why isn't more research done on bullying beyond high school, or is it again the acceptance of bad behavior by society?
I think more research is currently being conducted on bullying at the four-year colleges and also in the workplace. And no, it's definitely not a behavior that's acceptable.
Rochelle, this is a three-part question. Part one, what are the common responses parents have once they find out their child is being bullied at school? Two, on the same note, what are the common responses of parents when they find out their child is the bully? And three, finally, how do you handle the scenario on a school level?
I think that's an excellent question, Carmen. I think to just sum up the parents' response, all parents want to just make sure their kids are safe in school. And so typically when I receive a phone call at the central office because there's a concern around bullying, it's typically around the safety. Parents want to make sure, will my kid be safe? My kid came home and said that he or she was bullied, and I don't feel like he or she is safe. And so one of the things that I, try to do immediately is to really make the parent feel as if I'm going to do whatever I can do as a public school administrator to ensure that their kid will be safe. But even for the parents that I've spoken with who, their kids have been identified as, the one that will bully, it really is a response of concern. They want to make sure that the kid that is potentially the victim because of their child's behavior is safe, but also they wanted to make sure that if there's some issues with their kid, that the school can meet their needs as well. And so overall, I think parents just want to make sure, can I send my kid back to this school? Will my child be safe?
Very good. Colleen, what are the effects on the family as a whole when a member is being bullied?
Well, one of the things that we have to remember, and just going back a little bit to a previous question, you had asked about the factors that can influence a child being a bullier, and very often there are some things that happen at home that do influence bullying. There can be substance abuse, alcohol abuse in the home. There could be physical abuse in the home. So as was mentioned, we really do need to look at the bullier and sometimes see deeper what are some of the things that are contributing to the behaviors that are happening here. Parents, and part of my position is to run the parenting center at Anne Arundel Community College, and parents do have an important role here. It starts very, very young in how we parent. We do see that in some cases, children who bully come from homes where parenting can be either very permissive or very, very harsh, or can go back and forth between the two. And that can leave a child very confused. That lack of consistency. So we really do want to be consistent parents as we raise our children. And we want to teach our children being empathetic to avoid creating bullies. And certainly we want an environment that isn't a violent environment at home. But when bullying does happen, if you are the parent of the victim, you're certainly going to want to listen to your child. And that's so often, and I think especially since we see bullying spike at middle school, some parents will look at the child and go, oh, we've hit that middle school age, now my happy, sparkling, happy-go-lucky child is withdrawn and not talking. Well, there's usually more to that. Yes, we do see moodiness at middle school, but really parents need to be chief investigators and look into what is happening. And so they really do need to become as involved as possible and to listen. They have to understand that in some cases, if a child is the victim of bullying, they may take out some of their frustration at home. So be receptive and understanding of that. They have to be careful that other siblings won't step in. Because that sometimes happens and other children in the family can get in trouble with they're trying to defend the sibling, but nonetheless, that's something to be of concern. And parents may end up wanting to do something and confronting the parent of the bullier. That's never a good idea. That really should be something avoided. Parents should be actively partnering with the school system to see what can be done and encouraging the child maybe to keep a log of what's happened. In some cases, it's as simple as saying, you know what, every day between period 1 and 2 in A hall, this group of kids is always there by such and such lockers. Maybe it's keeping track of that and being able to substantiate that and explain that to the school, and the school can provide the support needed.
Okay, that's really good. Now to all of you, as a parent, how do you keep your child encouraged and their spirit going once you find out that they're a victim of bullying?
And so as Colleen said, I think the first thing you want to do is listen. You want to really empower your child. And the only way you can do that is creating a platform by which they feel like they can talk. Because as we mentioned earlier, we talked about why sometimes kids won't report the bullying. And sometimes it's because they feel like they're not safe. And even at home, sometimes, kids may feel like, well, you're not going to believe me because, you may see me as one that, have these kind of aggressive behaviors. And so now I'm coming home saying that something is happening to me, and they may not feel like their parents believe them. And so, as a best practice, we really say to parents, you want to listen, and you don't want to blame them. And you also want to let them see the collaborative effort of you as a parent partnering with the school.
Yeah, I concur with Rochelle that parents should ask questions, listen, and speak with their child about how they can overcome or combat bullying and how they can do it together. Let the child come up with his or her own plan and then talk about how they can together stop bullying.
And really look too, as this is unfortunately, sometimes it is a part of growing up, and this is something that's going to help the child learn to be resilient. Because resiliency and learning that skill is something that's going to help them the rest of their lives. So it's taking it as, obviously it's a negative situation, but let's look at this as an opportunity to grow and be stronger and realize that we can overcome this.
Dr. Irving, how can a parent of a bully change their child's behavior? And how can parents impress upon the child that this kind of behavior is more hurtful than they may realize?
Well, I think the parents should work with the school. And most schools have some anti-bullying intervention in place. And they should talk about how to treat people with their children. And they should discuss with them that some behaviors are definitely not appropriate, they are hurtful, they cause harm, and they should continue to use different interventions that are provided. There's a lot of interventions online, Don't Laugh at Me, and programs that they can partake in with the child, with the bullier.
Okay, now this is for each of you. Primarily, bullying takes place at school. What changes could be made to the schools to create an atmosphere that does not tolerate or support bullying?
they could put some intervention programs in place, things like speaking out against bullying, having the children participating in programs, making pledges, banners, and posters, and just putting some policies in place that they will not tolerate bullying, and also do conflict resolution type things, counseling and training.
Carmen, your thoughts on that?
I agree with what Dr. Irving said. It's certainly, we're seeing more training being provided to school staff at all levels to be able to identify bullying and work with the students who are in these situations. Schools can put into place a buddy system in some cases. We also think, the more adults in the area, obviously, the better. So parent volunteers can help. Certainly a parent who's had a child that's been bullied is going to be perhaps somebody who wants to volunteer in the school and be more of a presence in the hallways where some of these activities sometimes take place.
Rochelle, where can a parent or students go to find support and information on steps to prevent and report and stop bullying?
Well, I think, again, as Dr. Irvin and Colleen has stated, they should really, tap into the resources that a school will have. And if I may just add some comments to the previous question around what schools can do, I think it's critical for our schools to focus on creating environments that are safe. Students really need to be in environments that are caring, that are accepting, so that they can thrive academically as well as socially. And so for the work that I do, school culture, that is what I drive, really working with schools to ensure that they are welcoming, safe, and supportive for all kids. And the important part of that school culture is positive relationships between the students and the teachers, as well as the parents and other community stakeholders, because one of the things that we know is that when a kid is not feeling supported and is not feeling welcomed and safe, then they won't have an opportunity to speak and talk to a caring adult about what's going on. But also, those relationships from the adult perspective allows us to really identify bullying behaviors. And so if we don't have relationships with kids, we kind of miss those behaviors and they fall under the radar. And so parents really should, contact school administration if they're unclear about what is in place, but hopefully every school district has, attempted to talk about this issue from a policy standpoint. And it really starts with the district, and it really also starts with the principals in the school buildings, understanding that there should be school-wide efforts to support bullying. There are some interventions in place. Prevention is the key, and so there are a lot of evidence-based programs out there that kind of approach bullying from a preventative standpoint. But then once we get to the place where we notice that there are a lot of bullying behaviors, you got to have some consequences in place, some logical consequences. There should be some connection with the bullying behavior with any disciplinary policies that a district has or that a school has. And then lastly, there should be training in place, training for parents, training for teachers, and training for community stakeholders and the students as well.
But would you all say that schools are comfortable with investigating bullying?
Yes. I do believe that schools really have, they consider themselves places for learning. And as Rochelle mentioned, if you don't have a safe environment, if you have an environment where students are not feeling comfortable, they can't learn. And that is the school's #1 mission. So naturally, they want to create a safe environment. Most schools do have policies in place. They do have forms and incident action forms and things of that nature ready to go when something does happen. And most schools are doing what they can to prevent it from happening in the first place. Yeah. There's a lot of training going on, as I mentioned earlier. So I do think that they are working, as best as possible to keep bullying outside of the school. Mm-hmm. But as we know, sometimes the bullying is coming from outside. So there's still the issue of the child who might be bullied on the way to school, the children who are suffering from bullying, as we mentioned earlier, through cyberbullying. Things of that sort. So it's not necessarily happening in the school, but naturally it affects the student and it affects learning. So therefore the schools are, I believe, trying to be very proactive, but they certainly need the help of parents as well.
I agree with Colleen, because I think the schools are raising awareness on bullying and increasing teacher and parental involvement, as Rochelle mentioned. And I think they're forming clear cut rules against bullying.
What suggestions do you all have for the teachers and administrators as far as developing an environment that's safe for students and non-tolerant of bullying and handles bullying complaints more effectively?
So again, as I stated earlier, I think there has to be clear expectations around what the school culture is, a culture of nonviolence, a culture that says that, we don't tolerate bullying. And so some of the evidence-based programs really suggest that you have anti-bullying rules posted, but also a process in place for reporting. And so again, it should be aligned with, any kind of student disciplinary code. It should be attached to some of the other aggressive behaviors with the similar logical consequences in place. I think one of the pieces that really has to be solid for any school is communication. And so you may have these, really tight systems, but if the parent has not been looped in on both sides, and that, imposes a problem. And so part of the process is making sure that parents are involved from the first time you understand that there's a bullying incident.
And that parents know what the policies are
Yes.
up front, even before there is a bullying incident.
I concur that parents should know what the policies are. They should continue to be involved, and there should be a strict no tolerance bullying program put in place.
I want to go around the table and get final thoughts from each of you on bullying.
And so I would say that I think that we are seeing that bullying is almost becoming an epidemic, and I hate to say that, but it's increasing. If you look at the research over time, the numbers are growing, and we're seeing it, as I said earlier, it's pre-K-12, post-secondary, and because we understand that this is increasing as a societal issue, I think that we have to rally our efforts, one community to another, to support our schools to ensure that our kids are safe, and so we have to have these clear expectations, we have to have these systems in place, but more importantly, we have to have education that trains our students, our teachers, and our parents.
And I second certainly what Rochelle has said. I think that we really need to, as parents, look at what we're doing to provide our children with a very stable home life. If there needs to be training for parents on anger management and things like that, that should be, those classes are out there. They are available. Parents should be really realizing they are the primary role model. Also, it starts at a very young age, and we can't just wait until it happens in middle school. We have to really raise children to be empathetic and resilient, to be, have strong and powerful body language, but empathize with others at the same time. So you are creating a situation where you appear that you don't want to be a victim, and you certainly are not going to be the child that does the bullying. So those are the kinds of things that from a very young age we need to be very cognizant of as parents.
I would urge parents to listen to their children. Bullying is not a normal process of growing up, and most bullying takes place at school, usually when an adult or parent is not around. And they should encourage their children, and I think the schools should do that too, but also put something in place to let them know that being a tattletale is not a bad idea when it comes to bullying, because hurt feelings caused by bullying can last a lifetime. And bullying is not a one-time thing. It happens over and over. So you must tell someone.
Thank you to each of you for coming to the show to talk about such an important topic. We'll return in a moment.
Brenda, hi, and I'm the founder and co-director of Bully Police USA. Well, in the simplest terms, we're advocates for kids who are being bullied at school. We start by educating lawmakers in each state about the need for common sense anti-bullying laws, and then we work with school districts to help them understand the need for good, solid policies so that they have direction on what to do with children who are being bullied as well as the bully. Well, it kind of started back in 1998 when my son Jared was bullied at school, and he'd been the victim of older kids bullying him while he was the coach's assistant at his softball or baseball team. And the kids that were bullying him were 2 years older in most cases. He was a sixth grader, Jared was a sixth grader, and the boys that were bullying him were 8th graders. And as a result, one of the bullies, a chronic bully, followed Jared into the gym at the very last of the season and literally beat the tar out of him. So Jared got to the doctor, went to the chiropractor, and he had some emotional injuries as well as physical injuries, but we didn't know it was called depression that he had developed. And during the summer, he became extremely violent. Well, he'd be one day he'd be fine, but other days he'd just be really down. And he developed that during the summer, and we decided to put him in another school district. And we thought everything was fine. We relaxed, and 3 weeks later, Jared refused to go to school, and then he called my husband at work and said, Dad, I just called to say goodbye. And then he shot himself. I was on the phone with my husband. And our lives immediately changed. And the police officers that morning asked, why would Jared do such a thing? And I said to the policeman, well, he's never been the same since he was beat up at school. And they asked the name of the bully, and one of them had actually done the report that we had done with the police department. And we told them the name of the bully, and they all go like, yeah, we know him. He was crying. So anyway, we had been looking for an attorney before Jared died for violation of Jared's civil rights, and hadn't been successful at that point, but we did find an attorney to take on the case of Jared as a wrongful death lawsuit. So at that point, we did depositions, our attorneys did depositions, and during the depositions, we found that there were no policies, no procedures, no direction at all for educators and teachers to deal with bullying. And so at that time, they had actually been discussing an anti-bullying law in the state of Washington. So I went and talked to the lawmakers, and I testified at the Education Committee in the state of Washington, and they passed it out of committee and and passed it in House and Senate, and the governor signed it, and so we had an anti-bullying law in Washington state. At that time, then, I started getting phone calls from other parents all over the country saying, we want, an anti-bullying law passed. How did you do it? So that's how Bully Police USA got started. We incorporated in November of 2003, and it's just steadily grown. We're all volunteer. Nobody is paid in our organization, and we don't even really go after any donations. We're just passionate parents that want to make a difference and want to communicate with lawmakers, parents, teachers, just anybody that will listen about getting rules and procedures to abide by. I learned a lot about what happened from the experiences of what happened to Jared. Mostly I learned that kids have emotions and feelings, and when they come to you for help, you need to listen to them. And I think that's what all of us in our family, we learned to take things more seriously when a child is upset about something. Jared was a sweet boy. He was my climber. He climbed just about everything. He was also excellent on the trampoline, could do double flips and all kinds of cool things. He loved animals. He almost always had a cat on his stomach. And in fact, I'll just tell a little story about it. His sense of humor, incredible. When he was younger, his older brother, we lived out in the country just a little bit, and we had people that dumped their cats out here, and so we kind of adopt them. Can't stand to see a cat suffer, I guess. Anyway, Jared would go catch these cats and bring them home, and one time he went out to catch them and apparently got a wild cat and it scratched him. So he'd come home complaining that he couldn't catch the cat because it scratched him. He was upset. Later on that day, his older brother, Jacob, was having a fight with Jared. They were arguing with each other, and Jared obviously can't fight his older brother because he's older. And so Jared just said to him, why don't you go out there and find that cat so the cat could do the job of scratching him. So fun-loving boy and pleasant to be with. You know, changed after he was assaulted by the main bully. But, you know, up until then, we absolutely had no reason to distress with Jared. He was always just a very pleasant boy. Well, each person in the family grieves differently, and for instance, with me, I threw myself into working on Jared's Story, my website, Jared's Story. It was my healing project, and that helped me to kind of cope with the pain and the grief of losing Jared. I mean, you never get over it, but you're able to, you know, get through it. And my husband, he had a very difficult time. He developed depression himself, and he ended up on St. John's wort, and some natural things to help him to deal with the depression. But his project was to get the headstone made for Jared and just kind of get everything settled in that direction. My older daughter, she was on medications for depression. In time, though, she has become a very strong, all of my older kids have become strong adults. My son, Jacob, had a hard time with it, and it wasn't until like 8 months later he finally broke down and cried. I don't think anybody saw him cry until then. And he finally began to deal with it. And then my younger daughter, she's had problems off and on with a little depression, but they're all now married and happily married and doing very well. My older son is in law school, and life goes on. Sometimes it takes longer for some people to deal with the grief than it takes others, and we've all dealt with it differently. But it's been 12 years, so I think we're all kind of activists in a lot of ways as far as, you know, trying to alert parents about every individual child, how they can be affected by bullying. If I could give parents advice on their children if they're being bullied, I would say this: take it seriously, keep really good records, make sure the principal, the superintendent, and all members of the school board know that it's going on. Do not hide it. Do not, your child's going to say, don't tell anybody because it'll get worse. Well, it will get worse whether you tell anybody or not. And if you start keeping really good records and make sure that the school district knows what's going on, then there's no denying when it does happen again. Then everybody knows that it's all out in the open. They know who the bully is, and they know who your child